Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Niall Coady. You already know David, but I'm from a company based in London called MyPressExpert, and the purpose, I suppose, for our business is color management. So that's the main focus of my business, and that's usually what I lead with when I speak to my clients. I think everybody would agree that color management impacts a lot of different areas in people's workflows. So hence the need for workflow tools like Callas and working closely with pieces of software like FileTrain that allow us to thread good color management workflows together with objective or useful PDF workflows as well. So I'm here today to discuss with you a case study, an example of some work that we did for a company called CSLabels. I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible. David's going to cut in and talk to you about some of the things that he was involved with on the project as well. In fact, we worked very closely on this project together and came up with all of the concepts together as a result from the meetings that we had with our client.
There's more to be done, right?
Yes, there is.
It's never ending.
It is never ending. Actually, that's a really good point, because this client was so fantastic. They didn't, some clients already think about what they want before you come in the door. So as a consultant, they're already thinking that they want something in a specific way. This client had a problem, and they came to us with problems, and they just wanted our interpretation of how we could solve those problems. And we came up with some pretty neat ideas in the clever ideas in the meantime, and they liked those ideas as well. So, I mean, to introduce the client, they're the largest manufacturer of digital printed labels. Essentially, they're the biggest Zycon user in Europe. That's the bottom line. They produce labels onto several different types of substrate, and they're quite innovative. They have won awards, many awards, for doing things that are not the regular run-of-the-mill stuff. So they're actually pushing the boundaries of the Zycon machinery on a daily basis. They're based in Birmingham, and they do a storming good business. These are the types of machines that they print on, so it's like web-based digital devices. And when we went to see the client, they basically said to us, look, we're putting in a new one of these Cheetah machines. I don't know how many prints an hour the thing does, but it's quite a stonking beast. And they said, look, we have 5 people in our artwork department, and we're suffering because this is a bottleneck for us. We are either going to have to hire some new people, or we're going to have to automate some of these processes to try and cut down the bottleneck that we currently have. I did an initial audit, and again, taking the brief from the client, the conclusion of my audit was that they wanted to simplify their workflow right from the get-go. So in other words, from the sales perspective, they wanted to estimate their jobs more effectively. And they needed their salespeople to be able to measure files, and as it says here, quote about ink coverage, because of course too much toner on the paper meant that they had to finish it with a special type of varnish to make sure that it didn't crack in production. And the sales department also really needed to know whether that PDF was going to make it through the artwork department. In other words, we needed to know that there was a good piece of artwork that they were going to be dealing with. And we set about creating for them a nice little short report. This initial report was created with a combination of 2 products, Callas pdfToolbox and FileTrain, and some work that David did. I think we'll tell you a little bit more about that afterwards, but with regards to calculating the toner coverage on these files, in other words, a separation of the file to find out where we were using the most ink, and if it was a high coverage of toner, that essentially the sales department could estimate and charge for the extra varnish that they'd have to put onto the label.
So while you have this on screen, so what we did was use the preflight HTML reports that you have in pdfToolbox. We basically simplified it. Normally you have the other icons that appear there as well, and you have the fixes that were done and so on, and the client said this is all way too complicated. So now it either shows a red check or a green check mark, depending on whether the file is good or not. And then you see one of these sections here called document information. We actually, through JavaScript, added a new section that does the calculations for the ink coverage, and where you can see, thank you. I didn't know you had it in your slide. Where you can see ink coverages are. It's a little bit more complex than what it could have been, because they don't want to convert to spot colors in the file. So if a file comes in with spot color, they wanted to retain the spot color in the file, but they didn't want to see the spot colors come up here. They want the cyan, magenta, yellow, black percentages to incorporate what would happen if the spot color was converted to CMYK, which was a little bit more complex in JavaScript than I originally thought, but it's, with the pre-flight report information and so on, it can be done. And that gives them, for the salespeople, gives them something really, really simple where they can see, is this high ink coverage or not, and do we have to charge for the extra varnish?
Yeah. And you'll also see that the visualizer report, that's something we added quite recently actually. The client said, look, you know, it's great knowing that we've got a high coverage of ink in a particular part of the file, but is that a very small area or is it a very large area? Obviously, it makes sense that if it's a larger area of rich black, for instance, that we're dealing with, we really do need to have put a varnish on there, and probably, you know, instead of varnishing a specific area, perhaps the whole label needed to be finished this way. So we, using, well, I think you set it up inside of FileTrain. We used a command line request to the CLI version of callas pdfToolbox to create a visualizer report on the fly, and that was spit out into a folder along with the short report that we've already shown you. So they get, essentially, when they sales department drop a file into their input folder for the sales department or the estimating department, they get two reports out. One that gives them a visualizer that shows them the coverage of the file in visual terms, and the other, of course, is their customized report that gives them only the information that they require. And if it's a big red X, then of course they know that they have to send that artwork back to the client, and they have to do some work before it ever gets to the point where somebody in the artwork department needs to deal with that file. We went further than that. Again, how long is a bit of string? There's a lot of things that we can talk about this, but some of the things that we did in terms of making process plans that we were using both in the sort of a sales pre-flight area and the production area, because we have a separate workflow for that. But things that we wanted to do to help them. And I hasten to add that some of the things here, that it's not 100% effective, and I'll explain that. Well, essentially, some files slip through the hoop. Some files essentially have media box, artboard, everything is all in one. So, you know, we can do nothing about those files. They have bleed set up that's been, you know, a template in InDesign as opposed to a technical art box or trim box inside of the file. So there are things that get through this workflow that there are problems with, but they would have had problems with those files anyway. So what this system is doing is highlighting those files for them. And the others, we can do things like making sure that all their cutter guides are cut with 100% magenta on a separate layer, that we're adding bleed where required, so we're detecting whether bleed exists in the document. If it doesn't, we're dynamically adding it. Of course, you'll see later on, well, in the next slide or two, that we have a full color management complement there as well. We're using the Color Logic products, which of course is something that 4Ps deal with as well. And that's how we're handling some of this RGB and CMYK, you know, issues inside of the files. Okay, and that brings us in here to, again, the Zepra is the engine that we're using. You know, we're going to try and further implement some sort of cohesion between FileTrain and Zepra as well. This is something that Laidback are quite interested in doing. I think I know there's somebody from Laidback here that I spoke to last night, yeah, about this. So again, trying to sort of bring some cohesion between these different products. But this has worked out very well. I don't know if there is people, I know Peter Kleinheider is, for one, he deals with Color Logic, and there's probably a couple of other people that are familiar with the product in here. But it is a very good color server, and it allowed us, again, as you can see, to do some of the work that needed to be done to files in the first instance, i.e. RGB to CMYK type of conversions, using device links and increasing, you know, so the accuracy of that conversion, as well as going right down to the press and providing an ink optimization or ink savings type device link to try and, again, further justify the project. The more we could save the client and the more we could, you know, stabilize the printing, it was just all big pluses for us to get more and more work done with the client over a period of time. I think that takes us into an implementation stage. Again, I said I would keep this nice and sweet. You know, I think instead of reading off the map, I said at the very beginning of this discussion that the client was open-minded. They came to us and they asked us to come up with a solution. We did, and our time on site, myself and David, in that first week, we really just identified a couple of things that the client wanted, and we delivered that, and they were really, really happy. And today, it's almost a year and a half later, we're still being invited in to do more and more work for the client and provide them with solutions. And I think the thing is that sometimes, at least myself, I could be blamed for going into a client and wanting to sell them all of these solutions all in one big package like a Kodak. But the most effective way to do it was to sell it bit by bit, like the way we did. And we've ended up with a workflow that is actually capturing the attention of big companies like Zycon. They're interested in what's happening with that client and continually asking how the client is getting on with the solutions that we've put together. I hope that gives you a bit of inspiration. I'm going to hand over to David now, who's going to talk a little bit further about.
Yeah, so to add to this part from my side, the way we work together on this is that I did go along with me from behind this pillar maybe. I did go along to the initial meeting, or one of the initial meetings with the client. In hindsight, it might not even have been necessary, but it gave them a little bit of confidence because they knew who they were talking about as well. Most of the other stuff has been done remotely, with Niall handling the installation and practical work on site, and I just delivering the bits and pieces that were needed, like the pre-flight report and those other things. It's a very nice way of doing things, and most of it can be done without me ever having to be there, which is nice. I travel enough.
It's Birmingham, after all.
It is Birmingham.
I'll sit down and let you get on with this, I think. Yeah.
I wanted to highlight a couple of the things that I ran into as well, because you never know when it comes in handy. We used FileTrain for this, and if you've ever done something with FileTrain, you can probably relate to what I have on the slide here. It allowed us to do exactly what we needed to do. The needs of this client in terms of automation were not that extensive, meaning that most of the intelligence was actually in pdfChip and in pdfToolbox and in the Color Logic products. It's just a matter of tying all these things together and making files go from one step to the other and splitting them up, making copies and so on. What you still see is that when you start doing things like this in FileTrain, you have to be very careful how you build the different stations in FileTrain in order to keep them maintainable. There are some issues with pdfToolbox and pdfChip that developed because FileTrain is a Java application, which on macOS 10 can be a little bit of a challenge. There are some issues with that. We know how to work around that meanwhile. It's not really difficult. But if you ever run into something in that area, come and see me and I'll tell you what the tricks are. And then the last one is kind of my fault, I think, for not thinking ahead, is that if you, in FileTrain, want to move stations from one system to another, then it would be much better if you thought about folder structures before you do so, and make sure that the folder structure you have on the production machine is the same or very similar than the folder structure you have on your development machine, because that allows you to just move things from one to the other. If you don't do that, and that's kind of the situation we are in right now with this client, you continuously keep fixing folders when you move it to development. So that's something to look out for, and something we probably need to fix at some point in this particular case. On the pdfToolbox side, I've already mentioned that. So the most difficult part there was that the client wanted to retain spot colors, but still count them towards the CMYK that was used in the file, which, strictly speaking, isn't possible. You don't know exactly how the conversion is going to be done by the engine that they have. We use the alternate color values for the spot colors to calculate how much they contribute to the CMYK in this case, which kind of works. Works well enough for the customer, let's put it that way. But that was a hurdle to be taken. We generate we actually do the pre-flight, we generate an XML pre-flight report, and then we use the information from the XML while creating the PDF report for them. And we generate 2 PDF reports for them. We generate a very summarized report for the salespeople and a much more lengthy report for the pre-press people. So depending on where it goes, which department it goes to, they have a different view on the same information. And then for pdfChip, and I actually talked about this this morning already, I think. For pdfChip, the main challenge was that we had a number of XML files and a PDF. So basically there is a template, and in that template you want a preview of the PDF file of the label that you're working with. And then you have an XML file that comes out of their MIS system with all kinds of information about that label. And you have an XML file for the pre-flight report that comes out of pdfToolbox. And you have these 3 things that you have to give to the templates in pdfChip. There is a really nice and ugly way to do this in pdfChip by using URL parameters in the call that you make to pdfChip. So you have the index.html file of your template, and then you have a question mark, and then you have MIS report XML equals, and then so 3 of these things. Unfortunately, that gives problems if the URLs have spaces in them, so you have to replace those, and it gives problems with some other characters. So there is a whole, I mean, in FileTrain, this was a command line to call pdfChip that was like 2 meters long, which makes it kind of unwieldy to handle. Luckily, and this is something we've very recently changed, as of pdfChip, I think 1.1, we have an additional parameter, import parameter, and you can specify that to pass a JSON file onto pdfChip. So you do the call to pdfChip, -- import, and then there is a name and the path to a JSON file. And that the content of that JSON file is imported into the pdfChip processing context, and from within your JavaScript code in the template, you can very easily access that. So what we do now in FileTrain is we write out a JSON file. The JSON file has all the paths to the different files that we want. Meanwhile, CSLabels has 2 different types of report that they want, and they also have a version that contains the white separation separately then, so there are some additional options. We just write a JSON file for all of that, and that JSON file gets given to pdfChip, much more maintainable that way, and no more hassle with strange characters in file names and anything like that. So the downside is, as we discussed this morning, you still have to write the JSON file, which is not that difficult with FileTrain, but still you have to write it somewhere, and then you pass that to pdfChip. The upside is that what I have now doesn't give me a headache every time I need to fix something. So I'd rather have a little bit more complexity in the FileTrain flow, but have it easier to maintain afterwards. Good, and I think that's the CSLabels story. If there are any questions, then I'll be happy to answer. And meanwhile, I would invite Stephan up here, because he's taking the second part of this presentation about something completely different.
So I would like to talk to you about this, about a project we just started called the PDFX-ready online tools. For those who don't know PDFX-ready, it's an association founded in Switzerland more than 10 years ago with the goal to promote and to facilitate the use of PDFX in the industry. And we have an association, we have roughly 250 members. Some of them are creators, ad agencies, designers, pre-press service providers, the few which are still left, and also the receivers, the publishers, the printers, digital printers. We have also a lot of stakeholders. We have a trade association, the trade press in Switzerland, all of them are members, training companies, consultant like I am, and also a couple of print buyers. For instance, the Swiss Postal Service, they are insisting that their suppliers, be it ad agencies or whatever, and also their printers, use the specification that PDFX-ready publishes, and they even encourage us to do a certification because they wanted to be sure that their suppliers are really able to follow the specification. So about 10 years ago we started doing certifications for our members. We have a creator certification, we have an output certification using the Games Workgroup output patches. That's the major reason why I'm so active in this process control subcommittee, that we get decent patches for our output certification. And then we have an expert certification, so somebody who has succeeded to be a PDFX creator or has an output certification can then participate in an online quiz where they have to answer 16 somehow tricky questions, and then they can call themselves PDFX-ready expert. But only for 2 years and have to redo the whole thing. So that's basically the activities. We do settings and instructions, which we call recipes for PDF creation out of different applications. We do pre-flag profiles, which are based on the network group specifications, and we do a lot of education. We have a guideline which has been downloaded 250,000 times already. We do newsletters and events, etc. So we thought, since a while ago, we thought we should have something which facilitates the pre-flight. Because a lot of users, especially those non-professional or semi-professional users, they don't know how to do pre-flight. Maybe they don't even own Acrobat Pro, or they don't know how to install a pre-flight profile, and it's very complicated, a lot of excuses. So we wanted to take that away to make it very, very simple to do a pre-flight. And so we were thinking of a client-server architecture, and the clients we are using, they are created with Enfocus Comic Send, which is a generator of small applications for Mac and Windows, where you can transmit PDF files, you can fill in job tickets. Then we have a server side, which is managed by Focus Switch. And the processing is done with pdfToolbox server, and we also have an application called Logics, which is called DocPiece Profile Tagger. And these two applications are running 3 different tasks. And the advantage of this architecture is that it's not a portal where people upload something and then expect an immediate feedback. So, because we send out the results via an internet service called TeamBeam, so they send them an email and then you can download the results from there, and so the user is aware that it will take 1 or 2 minutes to get the results, and the advantage is less time critical. If we have a little bit of overload on the server, then we can still blame the email service that it takes so long, and it's not so critical as when you have to wait and to get the result. So I tried to make a little demo. I hope the internet is still working. Otherwise, I was clever and I could do the screen movie, so I could show the screen movie, but I would like to show it live. So this is the connector. You can easily customize this background image, so you can, there's a lot of possibilities. The only thing which is fixed is this line here with the URL which goes to our website, and then you just have to drag one or multiple PDFs to that user interface. It's now catching the current job ticket from the server, and we try to make that as small as possible and as easy and understandable as possible. So we have basically, here this is a premium version, has 4 different tasks. It has a task which is called ISO to PDF converter, goes in both ways, which takes a PDFX file, which an output intent FOCRA 39 and converts it in PDF with an output intent for FOCRA 51, so the new ISO standard for printing, and it does also the other way around. So a printer receives a PSO coated V3 file, and with FOCRA 51 can convert that back to ISO coated V2 300, and as I said, it goes in both ways. That for this we're using Toolbox. Together with two device link profiles which were created by CoreLogic for the ECI group, which is, by the way, are available for free on the ECI website. Then we have a PDF preflight, and we have something we call a color preflight. So PDF preflight is the regular preflight from pdfToolbox with our PDFX-ready profiles. We have a library of 120 profiles which are in the archive there, and the intelligent profile selector picks the right profile to be used for this particular file. Then we have a color preflight, which also has very simple parameters. Color preflight, basically it allows to test if the images, the CMYK images in your PDF corresponds to the output intent or not. Because a lot of time people cheat on that. You're supposed to use as output intent the color space you have really used for your images, but most of the people unfortunately don't take care about that anymore. They just put the output intent the print shop would like to. So if you create an ad for a newspaper, they always, of course, use ISO newspaper as the output intent, but most of the time the images they use in this ad are ISO coded or swap or whatever. And a lot of time the color spaces are even mixed. So I use this tool which is behind this, the color jacker, since a couple of years. When I have a new customer consultant job, I always ask them, send me a couple of files, and then I analyze this with these tools. And then it's not uncommon that in a 16-page brochure I get maybe 30 images and have 15 different color spaces. From Euroscale, coated, uncoated, to swap, to LWC, to isocoated V2, FOCRA 39, FOCRA 37, anything mixed in the same file. And then of course they have an output intent, which might even be the output intent which would be corresponding to what they have printed. But the colors of the images are completely different. And nobody knows that because there's no way to easily detect that. This is one of there's a couple of other applications, but this profile tracker allows to identify this and to give you the closest profile out of the list of predefined profiles. So that's basically what's done here. Then in PDF preflight we have a little bit more parameters to give. We have 4 different printing processes. I will use now here a newspaper in order to generate a nice error. Then there's a question if RGB images are allowed or not, because since 2 years we have one workflow which we call CMYK plus RGB, which is now also was taken over by the Ghent work group, which allows RGB images in the PDFX-4 file. So you can say allow that or not. Then you can choose the kind of report you want to have in pdfToolbox, and you have to give your email address or the email address you want the results being sent to. So that's basically it. I will now call for a combined task, which launches PDF preflight and color preflight. That's a feature we have built in for the premium version of this tool, which is only available for the PDFX-ready members, because if you want to do PDF preflight and color preflight, you would have to upload the file twice. And here you only have to upload it once, get then two results in separate mails. They're not combined, that would be too complicated. It's possible, but we thought it's not that much of a preview to get two emails with the result. So I upload this, This is not that big a file. It's 2.6 megabyte. So it's uploading hopefully to the server. I tried this yesterday and miserably failed. And this time I think we have the same problem. Can anybody check if the internet is still alive?
It is.
It is?
Yeah, but the upload is...
No, for me it doesn't work.
No.
No, I just went to you. The cache it just worked.
I just tried. I tried 15 minutes ago and then it worked, so let me see again, otherwise...
It doesn't work for me either.
It just broke down.
Oh, okay.
3 minutes ago it worked, so it was
Yeah, so I did talk too much. So, luckily I have my screen movie. I can show it to you here. Yeah. So this is again the job ticket thing. Unfortunately, the screen movie is in German, but it's the same thing. That shows another feature. We have an English and a German version. And the upload will begin soon. Now it's uploading, gives you these green lights, and that's it. So it's very, very easy to use. There's not much things you have to explain or put long instructions. However, even the short instructions people are not reading. I got a couple of support calls on stuff which is clearly described in the instructions, and they're not really even reading that. But nevertheless, so that's what's happening here. I have to close it. Yeah, of course, they cannot connect to the server. Let's see if now the problem is that email is probably also not working. That means I don't get the results, which makes me a little bit uncomfortable because I've thrown away all the other results. Usually I always have some in store, but this time I really have to check later on where to get it.
And you're ready for it?
Yeah, no, I deleted them on the web server and did not download them. That's the problem. But let's hope that it will come again, and I will show you directly on the server how the report looks like. We also did customize the pre-flight report from the pdfToolbox server. So Peter Kleinheim invested a lot of time in this. We have, for instance, removed here the identification of the switch server, which is a little bit embarrassing. Then we have added trim box, and if it's different, also media box. We have here the separation, including the ink coverage. It's not so nice as in David's example, but Peter is thinking about having it on the list. Then we have the output intent, the PDFX standard is here, and we also added down here. We added, let's see, I go to full screen. We added here a section called pre-flight information, which contains the pre-flight profile, who has processed it, and the date. That's basically the changes we have done here in the custom report. We add a cover page to each report, telling directly in the header if it's an error, warning, or success. And we have some explanation on the process and some links to additional information. This is the workflow on Switch. Basically, there are 5 parts. We have a job entry section, which does a first check of the file, if it's protected, for instance. If yes, then the user gets an email telling him what the problem is. We also I included a blacklist feature. I hope we'll never have to use it. If somebody's misusing the system, I can say all users with from 4piece.com are excluded, and then they want to use it anymore. I could also see all users except David. We can cover that. And then we have, oops, that's not too much, we have the pre-flight section, which basically the usual success, warning, and failure route. And we split here into 3 different languages because we have already prepared for French, so also the French translations are not ready yet. So we only have at the beginning English and German. And the same similar thing for the CallLogic profile tagger, and it looks a little bit different for the ISO DSO converter, where you either have a failure or a success failure. Also means that it's not a PDFX file, but not a PDFX file with the output intent, which can be used for this. Then a message is sent out or a report to the user. So the workflow itself is quite simple. It's not that complicated. It's in the links where we split and select the files where there's some secrets. There's some little scripts we have to make and some things, workarounds. For instance, the client which sends out the emails doesn't support foreign characters like accent aigu or something in the file name. Then complete switch system is blocked for an hour, and so we have to find out to filter out these diacritical file names. So we have 4 variants of the connector. We have a freeware version, which is limited in the size of the maximum file size for the PDF for each PDF to 5 megabytes, which is quite low. So it's basically for testing. It's also limited in the features, so it doesn't have to combine PDF and code pre-flight, which is not really a big problem because the file size is anyway below 5 megabytes. They also cannot choose the comment or the kind of report they want. They always get comments. The premium versions are exclusively for our members. So we have individual members, they get 20 megabytes. We have corporate members, they get 50 megabytes. And we have PDFX-ready partner, like Callas, for instance, is a partner from the beginning, and they get 200 megabytes. The advantage is we know our partners and probably none of them will ever use that, so there's not going to be an overload by these 200 megabytes. The premium applications, they're only valid up to the 15th of March of next year, because that's the due date of the membership fee. So if somebody pays the membership fee, they get a nice email with a link and the password to the registration on download page, so they can download the connector for the next year. While the freeware version has no expiration date, so that works as long as the server is running. We had an event 2 weeks ago where we presented that for the first time in Switzerland with more than 100 people. That was a very impressive thing. We had work-Zepra as a guest speaker who explained a little bit the technology behind it, and so that was the official launch. We had exactly 2 weeks ago. There's a website for that, which I cannot show you, of course, now, but it's online-tools.ch for Switzerland. Luckily, this URL is still available, and we have an English version and we have a German version. Here is a list of the sponsors who made this project possible. First of all, callas for the Toolbox server, CallLogic for profile tagger, and Focus for Connect, Send, and Switch. Impress is hosting the server and helped us to set things up. Calibrate, that's Peter Kleinheim's new company. He had the original idea of the architecture of the whole system, and one of his employees helped me to set up the whole thing. And this is the logo of my newsletter. I did most of the implementation work and the nitty-gritty details. So it kept me busy for the last 6 months. It's not that fast that you can do that. That's one thing I know. All right, shall I try again with the internet? This was back up. Okay. Maybe we're lucky.
I told this week to stay away from But I still have not used my 200
And that's for each file.
Ah, wow.
You cannot use 200 megabytes anything. You're done. That's for each file.
You're going to have to blacklist.
Yeah. Now it's working. Okay.
We did a session for you.
I know that it's working. I even tried this out in the Indian Ocean on a dive boat using a satellite telephone. I did send, because it's boring if you have to cruise for 36 hours to get to the investing dive spots, and then I played around a little bit. So let's try it. I think it worked. It took a while to upload, and there's just a really small file. It took a while until it could upload, but the results were quite fast. Speaking of fast, so it takes, usually we did a survey for the beta tester, and about the search end it takes less than a minute. Now we're already here. The code pre-flight is already here, so you get a nice email. We have a link which goes to the TeamView server, and here then you can download the report and can access that. And here you get the report. This one was successful, I was lucky, telling me that this one image reading is fixed to the output intent. I had really luck. And then the other thing should also be here probably by now. We get the pre-flight, and there deliberately I choose a constellation where I got errors. So I got the pre-flight error here, and here it has one error, because I asked for newspaper, and in the newspaper pre-flight profile we only allow one page, because it doesn't make sense a newspaper app with multiple pages. So it says this has more than one page, and the ink coverage is too high, because it's a file which has been prepared for offset printing. So the ink coverage is too high, and the output intent is wrong for newspaper. So that's kind of warnings we get. So that's basically it. Very simple, easy to use, and we hope that as many people as possible will try it, and then they'll like it